Hey, what's up, y'all? Johnny here. Not going to be a side-by-side video for a change. I got something new to show you. Check it out. We have a 2022 Benelli 135, but this one I have upgraded just slightly. Bought this almost brand new. A lady bought it, came back with 275 miles to the dealer, traded it in on something bigger, so I picked it up for pretty cheap. Put a couple thousand miles on it, decided it was time to upgrade the power. You're looking at a CBR250R. Yes, it fits. I've not seen any other videos on YouTube where anybody stuck this motor in this bike, but it is possible. I'll give you a little rundown. I've got almost 2,000 miles on this motor since I installed it, and I've had zero problems. The bottom brackets here, you can leave the bottom brackets, you just have to reinforce them, make up some new mounts. The top rear bracket, the hole lines up horizontally, but you got to cut half the mount off. And sorry about the traffic noise. You got to cut half the mount off and get some angle iron bolted up to the motor, and then you're gonna have to shim it and then weld it in. You're gonna have to weld in the top bracket. The front bracket, I'll try and get up there and show you. You got to cut off most of the down tube because you got the header comes out right in the middle. But you want to leave enough to get 2 bolts through there. And this is some real thick 1-inch wide stuff. Bend it and bolt it in. I did not use the bottom mount. I just don't think it's necessary. That is the stock CBR250 radiator. The 2012 CBR250. It fits, but barely. You barely have enough room for it. Barely clears the fork tubes. And as you can see, there's not a lot of room between it and the header. And I've shortened that header. So I've tucked the header in nice and tight, try to keep it looking good. You can use the stock hoses, radiator hoses, just have to cut some length off. Trimmed up the bodywork to fit the cap in there, and I can get that cap off without taking the bodywork off, which is nice. There's more non-Benelli parts on this bike than there is Benelli parts. Aftermarket rear sets, but I didn't like the stock location, so I actually moved them back to the rear location, which is much better. It's a nice semi-sport riding position, but they work real nice. Rear brake, I never use it, but they're nice rear sets once you modify them. The only thing this bike came with, as far as the Honda, it did come with a Yoshimura slip-on. I had the full length on there. It just didn't look right. So I went ahead and chopped it, turned it into a shorty, used a little piece of the carbon fiber from the front portion to make a little heat shield here so it wouldn't burn my boot. Did a little exhaust tip, just thought that looked cool, little stinger tip. We'll give you the rest of the view around the bike. One issue I had, the stock blinkers, LED blinkers, do not like the Honda wiring harness. I guess you could have bought a special flasher or something. I didn't feel like going down that route, because they worked great at first, but then within a couple days they all started going out. So I went ahead and just went old school, incandescent bulbs, flush mounts. I'll show you the back. I went ahead and put screening in here and then mounted these up here. I actually think they look better than the stock blinkers. We've done aftermarket bars, clamps, used the Honda gauge. I got a switch panel here. One's for a rigid light, and that's just for a rock light I had laying around. These are all Honda controls, so everything is plug and play. Aftermarket grips, aftermarket mirrors, aftermarket clutch and brake levers, which they're nice. I mean, they're cheap Chinese, but they work really good. Upgraded the front brake line to a braided stainless steel brake line. Here's my rigid light. It's got a cap over it. I need to take the cap off for running at night, and that thing works really good. It's only the 2 light one, but that thing works really good. Really good. You don't need the wider one. That's tons of light. Working my way around. Made room for the horn. That bolted. Actually, I used one of the stock mounts on the radiator. Horn bolts right in there. Got rid of all the emission stuff. That's my crankcase breather. That's actually a modified clutch holder from the Benelli motor. I cut it off and welded it, and that holds that nice and steady. I am running the 428 size chain that came with the Benelli. Rear sprocket still stock Benelli. I think it's 36 or 2. I forget what it is. I've tried a couple front sprockets, the ones that you can for the Honda, but they use a 428 chain. I got a 17 on there now. I did run a 16. I don't know, I just like the 17 better, give it a nicer cruise speed. One thing I had to concede was there's no ignition switch up here. The Benelli was a 2-wire, the Honda's a 3-wire, and the Honda wouldn't bolt to the Benelli location anyway, and if I did put it there, the gauge package would be sticking way out here, which looks stupid. Did do a little plate to cover up the remaining hole here. So I put the ignition switch right down here. It's in a nice neat spot. It's out of the way. My pants don't catch on it. I mean, it fit in there nice and perfect. Used the stock bracket that I left up there. We got some nice sticky Bridgestones on there. They're fairly new. I'm going to be heading down to northern Georgia. I'm in Jersey, so I'm going to be heading down to northern Georgia here shortly with my side-by-side and with this. So I can't wait to hit some real roads, some nice curvy roads down there and really test out these Bridgestones. What else? The shifter pretty much bolted right up, I think, without any modification. Same splines as the Benelli. The other main thing, which is why this motor fits tight, it is a 250. If you go with a 300, they put a longer stroke crank in that motor, which means they had to have had a taller cylinder. I had to dish in the top of the tank, or I'm sorry, the bottom of the tank, where the float level kind of comes down a little bit. I had to dish that in just a little bit, no big deal. But if you go with a 300, you're probably going to have to really bash in the bottom of the tank or highly modify it. But the motor does fit. You're going to have it all the way back against the swing arm, but it fits in there nice. It looks, as you can tell, it looks like it came that way. That's what everybody says. Looks like it's the way it came from the factory. Here's the one big thing. I tried tank versus fuel injector. Major complication. There's no way to get them in there as they come, I should say. What I had to do, I tried making up like a 75-degree manifold, so the injector is coming down this way, so I wouldn't have to modify the tank. I couldn't even get the thing to idle right. Even changed the location of the injector itself, still couldn't get it to idle right. Finally, we went back to the stock location. That's the stock manifold, stock throttle body injector location with a unifilter on it. So what I did to make that work is you have to split the tank. So I have a top half of a tank, which is all stock looking from the top, and then I have a bottom tank, and the fuel pump is down below. So this portion of the tank is original, and I just had to add to it, and then you just add a feed line, and then you have to have a vent line going back up. If you're going to try this conversion, I would highly suggest you find a welder who's willing to weld up a fuel tank. I got lucky. I found a local young guy who did it very cheaply for a couple $100. I went ahead and tacked the tank all up, made it all up, just tacked it together because I just have a little flux core welder. And he went ahead and tigged it up for me. He did an excellent job. But yeah, I would find someone who's willing to weld a tank for you, because you're going to have to split it in 2 halves, fill in the areas, and so forth. I was able to keep the capacity the same, or maybe a hair more. Stock is supposedly 1.9. I measured it at 2 gallons even. So my range should be conservatively, easily 125 miles, and probably 150 miles if you ran it just about dry, which I don't plan on doing that. I'm trying to think what else. That's pretty much it. Stock tail lights still running, the stock headlights still running those, and that's about it. Everything else has been replaced. But you can fit a CBR250 in a Benelli frame, and it looks good in there. I mean, it just looks like it came that way. Splitting the tank is your main deal. The rest of it's just making up mounts, doing a little bit of light duty welding. Take your time. Took me about 3 weeks to do this. Not rushing. If I were to do it again, I could probably cut a week off, but 3 weeks to do it. But yep, there you go. CBR250 powered Benelli. And I like how the motor sits in there upright. My couple problems I don't like with the Groms. I don't really like the way they look. I'm not trying to hate on Groms, but I don't like the way they look. They look like something you bought from Kids R Us that you put a little battery in and your kid puts around the yard in. I just don't like the look. They look cheesy. And then when they stick the CBR motors in there, they got to lay them down so drastically. It just looks stupid. It just doesn't look right. And I wonder how good is the oiling at that angle, where this sits in there just like it came. So if you have any other questions, you can hit me up in the comments and I'll do my best to answer them. Oh, by the way, I am running the stock ECU as it came off the bike. Since the guy only had a slip-on, I'm going to assume it's never been reflashed. It's still the stock ECU. The bike runs really good with it. No hiccups, hesitations, or anything like that. It could probably use a tune because basically it's a straight pipe with a unifilter on there, so there's no air box. So it might run a little bit on the lean side, but probably over the winter I'm probably going to do the 305 big bore kit, and then I'll do something with the ECU, either reflash the stock one or go with aftermarket, which I'm not crazy about. But for now it's a stock ECU as it came off the bike, and like I said, I'm pretty sure it was never reflashed. So as long as you get that fuel injector and throttle body in the stock location, a unifilter and a straight pipe, it runs good on that. It runs really good. So there you go, guys. Any questions, you can hit me up in the comments. And that's it. See ya.